Hey folks, picture this. You're lying in a room that smells like stale coffee and midnight pizza, and the only thing keeping your thoughts from staging a rave is the gentle, metallic hum of a distant train whispering, "Maybe I'm late for the apocalypse." Weird, right? Before we drift off in a quaint little village where the hills rolled like the waves of the ocean and the trees whispered ancient secrets. The sun dipped low and painted the world in hues of amber and crimson as dusk gathered its shawl of stars. A gentle hum, more soothing than a lullaby, sang through the air, an elusive melody that could only belong to a train, chugging its way through the fabric of night. Young Leela lay sprawled on her bed, her wide eyes sparkling like the twilight sky, savoring the distant sound that whisked her imagination across time and space. With each rhythmic thrum of the train, her mind danced through landscapes of candy-coated mountains and cotton candy clouds, giggling like a giddy child at a disco. Ah, the adventures a train could promise. Who needed to travel with the Avengers when you had a ticket to the unknown right outside your window? One balmy evening, curiosity led Leela on an escapade to the outskirts of town, where the remnants of an ancient train station lay crumbling beneath the embrace of wild ivy. The air was thick with nostalgia, a sweet memento of bygone days when trains were crowned kings of travel, and stations bustled like buzzing beehives. As she approached, the dilapidated sign creaked a haunting welcome, as if it had been waiting just for her. Her heart raced like she was an intrepid explorer, discovering a treasure chest barely hidden by the sands of time. The scent of rust and aged wood wafted around her, filling her senses with the poignant perfume of history. Each inhalation a reminder of the stories waiting to unravel. Then from the shadows emerged Mr. Finn. The old conductor that time forgot his beard, a tangle of white, like frosted train tracks in winter, and eyes as blue as a conductor's cap. He seemed like a character plucked straight from a classic film, a delightful mix of wisdom and whimsy, where every wrinkle on his face told a story soaked in laughter and heartache. "Ah, the train," he began, his voice smooth like warm honey drizzling over biscuits, "is a magical thing. It doesn't just travel tracks, but paths of dreams." Leela leaned in, her heart thumping like drum beats in an epic movie, as he promised her secrets that had been lost in the shuffle of wheels and whispers. As they sat on a bench that creaked like a hippo trying to get out of a kiddie pool, Mr. Finn spun tales of bravery and adventure, of passengers whose dreams were stowed aboard just like their suitcases. He spoke of towns beyond the horizon where corn could talk and mountains did the Macarena, leaving Leela in stitches. "Every train carries a story," he chuckled, "whether it's a lost love letter, a cosmic traveler, or a cat with a fedora who fancied himself as an undercover agent. Leela was enchanted, her mind racing faster than the train itself, knowing she'd never look at the humble hum of the train the same way again, with her heart expanding like a balloon filled with cotton candy. She realized she was not just a spectator tonight. She was the co-pilot of a whimsical adventure, just waiting to unfold as the first stars blinked into existence. Twinkling like mischievous fairies, Leela made a promise to Mr. Finn that she would return, each time armed with a new adventure to unravel. The old conductor tipped his hat with a glint of humor in his eyes, his laughter mingling with the train's distant hum, creating a symphony only the night could compose. She headed home, the mysterious call of the train wrapping around her like a warm quilt, each whisper promising journeys beyond her wildest dreams. From that night forward, as she lay in bed, she didn't just hear the train, she felt it, felt the yearning of countless souls who dared to embark on the extraordinary. And in that small village where the hills rolled, Leela knew that every night was another opportunity to board the train of imagination and ride into the stories yet to be told. Every evening, as the sun draped its golden shawl over Leela's small town, she could hear the train's gentle hum whispering secrets through the air. It felt like a siren song, calling her to the rickety old station where Mr. Finn held court among the shadows. The clatter of chipped paint and rusted metal rang in her ears like whispers of the past, urging her to approach. Leela would dash through dew-laden grass, her heart bubbling with excitement, imagining the landscapes beyond the horizon, where mountains kissed the sky and rivers danced like mischievous sprites. Mr. Finn, with his silver beard and eyes twinkling like stars, was a maestro of tales, spinning accounts of daring adventures on the rails that took her breath away. She could almost smell the sulfur of steam engines and feel the rush of wind, even as she sat cross-legged on the ground, lost in his world of wanderlust and wonder. But as much as the train's murmur filled her with dreams, reality had a way of cloaking her in a shroud of rules and restrictions, tighter than a pair of too small shoes. One gloomy afternoon, her mother, with worry etched on her forehead like a cryptic map, laid down the law. Leela, you cannot venture to the station after dark, she said, her tone as serious as a mother hen guarding her chicks. It was the stuff of classic parental irony. Here was Leela, diving into worlds of excitement, while her mother was busy organizing a bedtime of bland safety. She could practically hear the fork-knife scrape of her mom's fear against the plate of her bravery. The tiny beat of her adventurous heart faltered under the weight of responsibility, feeling as if it were attempting to tango with an elephant. Despite her mother's restrictions, Leela's imagination thrived like an overgrown garden, bursting forth with wild flowers of possibility. Each night, her window became a portal through which she could escape, her dreams gliding towards the rhythmic lullaby of the train. She imagined her own adventures riding the rails, feeling the grit of the tracks under her feet, while the scent of pine and fresh earth wafted through the train's open windows. Leela could almost hear the passengers laughing, the clanging of their suitcases like castanets, and the train's whistle cutting through the night air like a hot knife through butter. Restless minds thrived in that darkness, and as she lay in bed, awash in moonlight, she turned her fantasies into resolute plans, plotting ways to outsmart her mother's watchful eye like a crafty little fox. Unfortunately for Leela, a lion's roar can rarely be silenced by a sly fox's tricks. The conflict brewing between dreams and reality became a tempest, brewing like a storm cloud heavy with secrets and electric tension. Leela devised plans worthy of a heist movie, strategizing like she was planning to rob a bank filled only with metallic trains and fragrant adventures. Her heart would race like a locomotive as she scribbled down every possible escape route in her not-so-secret notebook, full of doodles and bold dreams. But that dread of being caught by her mother, who seemed to have a psychic ability for detecting Leela's escapades, hung over her like a dark cloud. Home is supposed to be safe, her mother would say, the irony as palpable as the freshly baked cookies that Leela was expected to devour before bedtime. Sweet, but fundamentally suffocating. Still, the thrill of adventure warded off the banalities of routine, igniting her spirit like the coal fueling the train's engine. As Leela sat on her bed, clutching her notebook, she felt the world outside pull her like gravity itself. Every cautionary tale from her mother's lips seemed to echo in the corners of her mind, battling against that siren call of the distant train. Would the rules of home always keep her bound like a character in a movie too afraid to break free? But even she knew in her heart that the incredible thrill of following the hum of the train would be worth any risks worth taking. A soft smile crept across her face, mixed with a sprinkle of rebellion and a dash of nostalgia, because hidden within those secrets of the rails was the raw, unfiltered pulse of freedom, always beckoning to those stubborn enough to chase it, even if the journey meant sneaking out like a cat burglar under the cloak of night. In the velvet embrace of nighttime, when the world lay cloaked in shadows, Leela felt a tug at her heartstrings, a chorus singing the song of escape. Night after night, she tiptoed through the creaky corridors of her house like a covert ninja, her dreams glittering like stars in the vast expanse of the cosmos. First, she'd toss her scruffy teddy bear, Mr. Snuffles, onto her bed like a bouncer, keeping the door steady, while she slipped out into the wild unknown. As she ventured past the garden, the air smelled fresh, with a woody perfume from the old oak trees that swayed like giants in a lullaby of whispers. Each clandestine meeting with Mr. Finn became a magical theft of time, an exhilarating heist where adventure was the stolen treasure, just waiting to bloom in her eager heart. Mr. Finn, a curious blend of sage and mad scientist, welcomed Leela with an almost theatrical flair each time she snuck into his cramped workshop. The room was a maze of blueprints and maps, each detailed line pulsating with the promise of towns and railways carved like the veins of a mythical beast. She could hear the soft scratch of charcoal on parchment as he spoke of trains that journeyed beyond the horizon, their engines a symphony of clanking metal, tempered by the haunting whistle of destiny. With every chart he unveiled, Leela felt her imagination swirling like a storm, kicking up a whirlwind of dreams, powered by steam and imagination that left her gasping for air. They spun tales of fanciful destinations where wildflowers bloomed in colors that would make a sunset blush, and chocolate rivers flowed like sweet, velvety dreams. Little did they know, with each passing visit, they were edging closer to a hard crash, the moment reality would come knocking. However, on one fateful evening, the heavens chose to unleash a storm that was less gentle sprinkle and more Hollywood disaster movie. Thunder tumbles through the night sky like a rogue lion roaring objections, while rain lashed against the window like an overzealous drummer at a rock concert. In this cacophony, Leela and Mr. Finn plotted their next big adventure, mapping out fields of dreams under a paper lantern's wavering glow. But the flickering light couldn't illuminate the truth lurking just around the corner, the terrifying shadow of Leela's mother. Bao the cat, who had seen too much in his 9 lives, silently stalked their movements, giving off a vibe that could only be described as chaotically judgmental. Leela felt her heart race as the storm rattled the world outside, unaware that the tempest within her own home was about to erupt. Suddenly, all at once, the door swung open, as if the universe conspired to bring down her ambitious plans like a poorly built bridge over a rushing river. Her mother stood there, an embodiment of worry and a hint of disbelief, her eyes wide and shiny like marbles caught in a bright light. With a voice shaky from both concern and indignation, she demanded answers for Leela's haunting nightly escapades. "Where do you think you're going, Laurel?" "Off to join a traveling circus," she exclaimed, half amused, half alarmed. And there it was, the clash of dreams and fears. The mother's safety wrapped tightly like an old, worn quilt around her daughter's fiery ambitions, fraying at the edges with every word exchanged. Leela felt trapped between the life manuscripts mapped in ink on Mr. Finn's blueprints and the heavy tomes of caution written by her mother's hand. As Leela stood there, heart pounding in her chest, she could hear the storm muttering ominously outside, as if it too could feel the weight of the moment. Drummers drumming, and bassists plucking the strings of her tangled emotions. She gulped down her courage, channeling every ounce of defiance that lay tucked away in her spirit. A minor character determined to steal the spotlight. Mom, I don't want to be another ghost in your halls of concern. I want to chase shadows, ride on the rails of my dreams. With tears welling up like the rain clouds above, she felt that familiar spark, the yearning for a world bigger than her own. As she finished her pleas, the storm raged on, leaving a stillness that felt like the quiet after a climactic moment in a blockbuster film, where time slows and everything hangs on the edge of revelation. In that unsteady silence, one thing was abundantly clear. The adventure was just beginning, and whether flying high or falling far, the choice to leap into the unknown lay solely in her daring heart. On a night when the heavens seemed to rage against the world below, Leela found herself with a heart as wild as the storm outside her window. Thunder rolled like a monstrous drum, drowning out the steady whisper of her own thoughts. She stood in her dimly lit room, the air thick with the scent of rain and desperation. With a flick of her hand, she tossed aside her worn paperback. The hero, having made a foolhardy escape that Leela both envied and craved. What's stopping me? She murmured, a slight smirk creeping onto her lips as she imagined her own grand escape into the murky darkness beyond her home. Grabbing her coat, she stepped out into the tempest, ready to defy the elements and her own fears. The train station loomed ahead, a beacon against the wrath of the storm, its looming edifice cracking and creaking like an old ship ready to sail. As she approached, Leela could smell the damp earth mingling with the rust of iron tracks, an aroma that promised adventure, and perhaps a whiff of danger. The wind howled like it was auditioning for a role in a horror film, but Leela pressed on, buoyed by a sense of purpose that felt both ridiculous and exhilarating. Just then, she saw it, the faint, ethereal glow of the train punctuating the swirling mist, a siren call of steel and dreams. It wasn't just any train. It was her train, a magical chariot from a fairy tale, poised to whisk her away from the drudgery of daily life to the pages of an unfolding story she could write herself. Standing on the damp platform, Leela spotted Mr. Finn, the station master, his broad-brimmed hat tipped back as if he were the gatekeeper of destiny itself. He was a quirky fellow, with a beard that seemed to have its own personality, part wild, part wise, and undoubtedly filled with secrets that could spill like marbles on a polished floor if only you had the nerve to ask. Hurry, my dear. The train doesn't wait for anyone, not even dreadfully stubborn dreamers. He called out, his voice buoyant, cutting through the storm. Leela's heart raced, fluttering like a caged bird desperate for flight, as his urgency wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Yet, in that moment of undeniable excitement, a flicker of doubt crept in. What of the safety of her home? What of the comfort of predictability, with the gentle rumble of the train echoing in her ears, and the scent of electric rain intermingling with the soot and steam? Leela found herself on the edge of decision. It felt akin to standing at the precipice of a roller coaster, heart thumping chaotically as you question the sanity of what you are about to do. Except this ride had no safety harness. Would the thrill outweigh the risk of being splashed in the puddles of regret? She pondered. She inhaled deeply, allowing the storm to fill her lungs, harmonizing with the rhythm of her beating heart. The moment danced before her, captivating, tantalizing, and just as terrifying as a clown at the midnight circus. With grit forged from her dreams and a sprinkle of audacity, she resolved to hop on, dust off the fear, and embrace the wild unknown. With a deep breath as soul-stirring as a coffee-scented dawn, Leela stepped onto the train, each movement like a note in a symphony of fate. The doors whooshed shut behind her with an air of finality, as if sealing her decision in a cocoon of promise. The train surged forward, jostling her slightly, but her spirit soared, buoyed by possibility. The rich aroma of polished wood and an alluring hint of hot cocoa enveloped her, teasing her senses as she settled into a plush seat that felt more like a throne than a mere place of respite. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels against the tracks, like a serenade meant just for her, awakened every ounce of hope buried within a gentle hum that outside, perhaps, she would find the life she'd always longed for, waiting just beyond the curve of the horizon. As the train departed, its rhythmic chugging became a gentle hum, weaving a melody that cradled Leela's restless thoughts like a warm blanket on a chilly night. Outside, the world transformed into a watercolor canvas, each vibrant stroke blurring into scenes of verdant hills and sun-dappled forests. The scent of fresh, rain-soaked earth filled the air, mingling with the faint whiff of coal and steel, igniting her adventurous spirit. In the quiet hum of the train, Leela felt both the thrill of the unknown and the tender tug of home, as if the train itself was whispering secrets of far-off lands into her eager ears. I could get used to this, she thought, imagining herself a modern-day pharaoh, traversing the lands in a glittering chariot, albeit one powered by steam and steel rather than the sands of ancient Egypt. With each chug and clickety-clack, Leela found herself drifting through picturesque vistas that danced outside her window. Landscapes straight out of a postcard, or perhaps a well-loved fairy tale. She watched as golden fields of wheat swayed like a sea against the gentle breeze, a pulsating heartbeat of the earth calling to her with every sway. It reminded her of those scenes in movies where the hero bursts free from their mundane existence and gallops into the sunset. But here, there was no galloping, just the intoxicating laughter of the train moving steadily onward. Her heart raced with delight, and somehow she felt taller, as if the train were lifting her spirit above the mundane worries of school and chores, leaving them behind on the dusty platform. Adventure is out there, she squealed silently to herself, channeling her inner Russell from up, ready to embrace whatever came next. In those conversations, Leela and her mother discovered more than just stories. They unearthed a treasure chest of feelings that had been buried under the weight of everyday life. They explored the bittersweet tang of longing for adventure while cherishing the comforts of home. It was as if the train had gifted them a new lens through which to view their lives, like a pair of funky glasses that made the world strangely hilarious and vividly alive. On the table, the remnants of dinner became props in their dramatic reenactments. A carrot became a fancy sword, and a spoon transformed into a microphone for Leela to sing about her adventures. Who would have guessed that a simple train ride could spark such joy? Feeling almost like they were the stars of their own sitcom, complete with laugh tracks and awkward family moments. As evening descended, Leela and her mother sat on the porch, the air filled with the scent of pine and the fading notes of crickets, creating a lullaby that encircled them in warmth, with the soothing hum of the distant train still echoing like a gentle reminder of their adventure. They clasped hands, united by the tales they had spun together. Leela realized that home wasn't just a place, it was a feeling, rooted in love and shared dreams, much like the elusive magic of Disney's pixie dust. The train, a steadfast companion, continued to impart stories, each whistle carrying laughter and hope like a message in a bottle launched into the vast ocean of possibility. Together they sat, hearts intertwined, ready to dream of the adventures yet to come, a world filled with whispers that begged to be turned into a delightful reality. As the old, creaking sign of Eldridge Station came into view, Clara felt her heart race with excitement and a dash of trepidation, like a kid peeking at their birthday presents. The station loomed like a cheeky ghost from a forgotten age, its windows clouded with grime and ivy sticky, with humidity reaching out like skeletal fingers. Clara could almost hear the laughter of passengers long gone, mingled with the mournful sigh of the wind through broken timbers. She stood there, imagining an era when steam engines churned and shouted, while families exchanged goodbyes and hellos with joy soaked in anticipation. "Welcome to the land of the uninvited," she muttered, snapping a quick pic of the decaying facade, a high-resolution time capsule awaiting a digital resurrection. She mused, smirking at her own historian humor. Ethan, her loyal accomplice in history hunting, fanned a hand theatrically over his brow, mocking a Victorian gentleman in an oversized bowler hat. "Ah, Clara, I do believe we're about to unearth the secrets of Eldridge from yonder shadows." The irony dripped thick as they ambled past the old ticket booth, its cracked glass reflecting their eager faces. The air pulsed with a damp, earthy smell, laced with hints of rust and decades of neglect that smelled like forgotten memories wrapped in old books. He pointed at a decrepit boarding platform, and together they swayed slightly, half expecting to feel the rush of imaginary train passengers around them, perhaps even hearing the distant echo of a steam whistle blasting, a charming precursor to today's annoying, ever-present train horns. Clara ducked under a tangle of vines that drooped like lazy snake tails, uncovering remnants of the past lost in the underbrush. A faded schedule tacked to a post swayed gently, its letters barely legible, yet full of promise. They told tales of times when Eldridge was a hub, alive with bustling travelers. She could picture it vividly: women in flapper dresses, men in suits, all bustling about, humming along to the jazz playing somewhere from an unseen corner. Maybe it was like a scene from a black and white movie, except less glamorous and more like a catfight for the last scone at tea time. Clara quipped, her eyes twinkling with the thrill of imagination. As they ventured deeper inside, she could feel the coolness of the station seep into her bones, enveloping her like a chilly hug from a forgotten friend. Inside the station, time had stretched and warped. The air buzzed with an uncanny silence, broken only by the scuttling of mice and the occasional drip of unseen water. Clara's fingers brushed against the cold, peeling walls, her heart racing with the thrill of discovery, as if she could feel the echoes of souls who once traveled here. She squinted, catching sight of old posters peeling away like ancient ideas that no longer fit the modern world. Their advertisements for local events beckoned like weary, forgotten whispers of camaraderie. The floor beneath them crunched with dried leaves, creating a melodic background to their exploration. Nature reclaiming what humans had abandoned. And in that moment, Clara caught Ethan chuckling quietly, snapping a photo of what he claimed was the Goblin King's throne, an old, broken chair surrounded by a nest of rusted safety pins. and unmatched socks as the sun slanted through the dust-encrusted windows. Clara began jotting down notes, her enthusiasm glowing like neon lights in the dim station glow. Here we stand, reliving the ghostly express of Eldridge, she announced dramatically, her notebook already filling with sketches and thoughts on the secrets they might unearth. But a sudden chill swept through the station, cold enough to send a shiver dancing down her spine, making her question if perhaps they weren't alone after all. With a nervous giggle, she declared, "If there are any spirits here, feel free to make your presence known, but maybe not too loud. I have enough noise complaints with my neighbor's cat." Pushing her fears aside, she squared her shoulders, steeling herself for whatever whispered tales awaited, ready to uncover that which had long remained elusive in the shadows of Eldridge Station. As Clara and Ethan stepped onto the warped boards of the old train platform, it creaked beneath their weight like a melodramatic ghost from a classic horror film. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and forgotten memories, punctuated by the faint aroma of rusted metal, a smell that could make even the bravest among us recoil. The once bustling station now lay silent, a lonely relic of a lost era where the echoes of laughter and the whoosh of trains had long ago faded into whispering shadows. Clara's heart raced with a heady mix of excitement and nostalgia, her eyes gleaming like a child in a candy store as she spotted discarded remnants of the past scattered about, half-torn tickets fluttering like battered butterflies, and abandoned luggage collecting dust like bad ideas. Ethan followed closely, his curiosity piqued like a cat that had just spotted a laser pointer, unaware of the deeper stories trapped within these worn artifacts of time. The two wandered through the remnants of what once was, each step uncovering treasures that seemed to breathe life into the decay around them. Clara knelt beside an old suitcase, its leather weathered, but still defiantly shouting tales of travel and adventure. She unlatched it with a grin, expecting perhaps vintage postcards or a forgotten letter. But instead, she was met with a pungent wave of mothballs and damp socks, an olfactory time capsule that almost made her gag. However, amid the forgotten contents lay a brittle photograph, its edges yellowed with age, depicting a family eagerly posed for a trip that never was. "Take it or leave it," Ethan quipped, wincing at the aroma. But this suitcase might just be the plot twist in a rom-com no one asked for. As they continued their exploration, Clara's sharp eyes caught sight of an old wooden crate buried beneath a layer of dust and spider webs that looked like something out of a low-budget Halloween special. With a quick yank, she freed the crate, revealing a mound of crumpled train tickets buried like treasure, each one a ticket to another time, another journey. Holding them up to the flickering daylight, she imagined the lives that swirled around those tickets, passengers laughing, crying, hoping, and fearing as they embarked on adventures and farewells. These are the real storytellers. Each torn edge carries whispers of journeys taken, she declared, her eyes sparkling as if she'd just won the lottery, not realizing she was holding stationery 2 decades past its prime. Ethan joked, "So, should we start a podcast called Ticket Talk? Because, I tell you, these tickets could give great interviews." Their expedition soon took them beneath the platform, where they uncovered a hidden compartment reminiscent of a secret lair in a superhero movie, dark, mysterious, and slightly damp. Clara's fingertips brushed against the crate they uncovered, sending a shiver down her spine, as if she'd just touched a relic of forbidden journaling. Among the litter of forgotten objects lay a dusty journal, its leather cover worn but defiantly intact. She cracked it open, the pages rustling like old leaves in autumn, revealing hurried entries filled with the frantic handwriting of the station master. This guy definitely had drama, and could rival any daytime soap, with hints of tragedy galore. Think General Hospital, but with less moody lighting and more steam engines, Clara mused, glancing at Ethan, who leaned in with intrigue and the thrill of uncovering history. As they read the saga etched within the journal, a swirling narrative of mishaps that led to the station's untimely closure, the playful atmosphere shifted subtly, replaced by a chilling realization. The tragic events seemed rooted deep within a web of human desire and disaster, each entry revealing a piece of a puzzle that painted a haunting picture of destinies collided and lives disrupted. Clara felt the weight of the station's history pressing in, thick like a fog that stirs up melancholic memories of lost journeys. Who knew a sleepy little station could be hiding this much drama? Ethan exclaimed, his voice echoing in the empty room, the humor cutting through the earthen heaviness like a sunbeam through clouds. With renewed purpose, they vowed to uncover the full story, the forgotten echoes of a lost era that would soon, like this old station, find a voice again. As Clara ran her fingertips over the worn leather cover of the station master's journal, she could almost hear the distant clatter of train wheels and the murmur of bygone conversations. Each entry she read seemed to rip a page from the past, unveiling a heart captivated by the shadows of love and loss. "It's like the train's whistle is echoing in my head," Clara quipped, a mixture of awe and unease threading through her voice. The station master's ink-stained words dripped with longing for a bygone romance, a haunting that was as palpable as the chill sneaking through the cracked windows. Just as they began to grasp the emotional weight of his words, a rustle in the corner startled them, sending a shiver spiraling down Clara's spine, as if the ghosts of the past were leaning in to hear their thoughts. The air thickened with an electric tension, as if the very fabric of the station was whispering its secrets through the cracks in the wall. Clara glanced at Edward, her partner in this spectral scavenger hunt, who wore an expression of both thrill and dread, much like the time they tried that spicy taco challenge at the food festival. As she spoke the station master's final tumultuous words about his beloved's tragic accident, a gust of wind swept through the station, swirling around them like the macabre dance of a ghostly waltz, carrying whispers of "help us" and "remember us" that felt simultaneously eerie and urgent. They exchanged incredulous looks, both half wondering if they'd unknowingly stepped into a B-movie horror flick where the popcorn had somehow gone stale. But this was no film. This was Eldridge Station, and the stories etched into its very essence were desperate to be unearthed. With newfound resolve, Clara and Edward stepped deeper into the heart of the station, their flashlights flickering like fireflies on a moonless night. Each beam illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air, a brigade of spirits swirling around their heads, and Clara swore she saw a sparkling glimpse of a woman in white standing at the edge of their light. You know, I bet this is how all those ghost hunters feel, running around yelling, "Show us a sign," while folks at home roll their eyes. Edward joked nervously, trying to shake off the contrast between his bravado and the overwhelming sense of foreboding. But alas, not a moment passed before they heard soft sounds, a whisper of fabric brushing past, the soft clinking of an unseen bell, like something straight out of an Edgar Allan Poe story, beckoning them to the forgotten stories laid to rest. Their laughter faded, replaced by a breathy silence as they stood, entranced, on the precipice between worlds, their hearts thundering like the last train pulling out of a long-abandoned station. The shadows grew thicker, and for a heartbeat, Clara could swear she felt a feminine presence beside her, cool and tender, like the first breath of autumn. As if in response to her unspoken question, the air filled with an agonizing, forlorn sigh that wrapped around them like an icy blanket, one that whispered of deep-seated sorrows, long buried beneath the rust and wood. The fading remnants of a life features glittered in Clara's mind like a puzzle needing just one last piece. She recalled the station master's notes, filled with hope overshadowed by despair, longing to connect with his lost love, a woman whose spirit still roamed these halls, gnarled and abandoned like the station itself. We have to find the truth for them and us, they echoed, as if the very walls urged them to carry on, their resolution steeled. Edward and Clara turned toward the faded remnants of the platform, its once vibrant color now dulled by years of neglect and the grip of the unseen world. The couple instinctively reached for one another, drawing strength from that connection as they traversed the cracked tiles beneath their feet, reminiscent of a scene from a Gothic romance where perils danced just out of sight. Clara could feel a tingling pressure in the air, a silent plea from the shadows flickering beyond their vision, urging them to bear witness before the memories slipped into the abyss of forgetfulness. It was a Ghostbusters moment, but with none of the marshmallow fluff, just raw emotion and pressing urgency. Together, steadfast and emboldened, they plunged deeper into the enigma of Eldridge Station, determined to uncover its secrets before the chilling echoes of time faded into silence, forever lost among the ghosts of yesteryears. The moon hung high and heavy in the sky, casting an eerie silver glow over the abandoned train station, its shadows stretching like fingers eager to touch the souls of the past. Clara and Ethan stepped cautiously through the crumbling archway, the air thick with the scent of mildew and forgotten memories. Each creak of the floorboards echoed like a whisper of bygone conversations, and they could almost hear the laughter of children and the hurried footsteps of commuters long gone. With a shared glance steeped in determination, they felt an unspoken bond pulling them deeper into the decaying heart of the station, where ghosts lurked behind rusty ticket counters and dust-laden benches. It was a far cry from the day trips they'd once taken to escape reality, but something about the night promised dangers and revelations alike. The journal, worn and yellowed with age, trembled in Clara's hands like a live wire, sparking with inexplicable energy as she cracked it open to reveal the faded ink of a desperate love letter. The ethereal chill in the air intensified as they gathered in a dusty corner, the moonlight illuminating their faces like characters in some suspenseful B-movie. With a deep breath, they joined hands, forming an unbreakable circle, and summoned their courage, ready for an impromptu séance that would make every horror movie enthusiast proud, or at least roll their eyes. A stray breeze swirled around them, carrying the unmistakable scent of iron and rust, the sort of perfume that would make even the bravest ghost shudder. Clara's heart raced, caught between a fear of the unknown and an overwhelming desire to help these troubled spirits find their way home, preferably before breakfast. As they summoned the spirits, a shiver crept through the station, as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting for a long overdue confession. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and a ground-shaking sob echoed through the damp air, resonating deep within the recesses of their souls. The spectral figures rose, flickering like old film reels, an anguished woman with eyes like burning coals, and a stoic man whose sadness was a heavy cloak. Clara and Ethan felt the depth of their pain, as if it were mingling with their own, revealing tales of a love that thrived in secrecy, yet fractured under betrayal's fierce onslaught. With each shared word, they painted a picture of despair that was at once mesmerizing and devastating, enveloping them in a cocoon of grief and hope, intertwined like ghostly ribbons dancing in the night. Tears streamed down Clara's cheeks as she listened intently, her heart aching for the station master, whose love story had crumbled like the faded timetables adorning the walls. She could almost taste the bittersweet tang of regret on her lips, as the station master's spirit seemed to grow more tangible with each confession, revealing the weight of his unattainable dreams and the stinging betrayal that rendered his love unreturned. Ethan, ever the comic relief, joked that they were playing ghostly Dr. Phil, eager to take up any spectral patronage in exchange for a better plot. But just when despair threatened to consume them all, Clara raised her voice, grounded in compassion, offering warmth like sunlight breaking over a frosted landscape, inviting the spirits to release their burdens and find peace at last. Little did they know, fate had one final twist waiting in the wings, ready to close the curtain on their ethereal encounter. With a gasp that echoed like thunder, the station master's spirit swirled before them, bathed in moonlight like a well-crafted CGI effect gone right. In one poignant moment, he finally released a heart-wrenching sigh that seemed to shatter barriers built up over decades. A thrumming energy cascaded through the station, mingling sorrow with immense relief. Clara and Ethan could feel their connection strengthen as the pain ebbed away, leaving behind only a whisper of gratitude, catching the sprightly wisp of the station master's smile. It was as if the very walls of the train station shook off a burden, breathing a sigh of its own, exhaling history long suffocated by neglect. As they stood there, enveloped in silence, tinged with hope, the feathers of forgotten tales brushed against their faces like a gentle goodbye. The night may have been dark, but every revelation had bathed them in illuminating light. As dawn broke over the forgotten Eldridge station, Clara and Ethan stepped out into a world transformed. The chilly morning air was laced with the smell of damp earth, and the distant chirping of birds sounded like a symphony, welcoming them back to life. They felt like adventurers returning from an epic quest, treasures in hand, except instead of gold and jewels, they carried the weighty revelations of a time long gone. The sun peeked over the horizon, casting a golden glow that made the old platform shimmer like a world waiting to be rediscovered. Much like a Hollywood reboot of a beloved classic, this wasn't just a station. It was a vibrant archive packed with laughter, loss, and lingering love stories that deserved their time in the spotlight again, with their imaginations ignited by the tales of the past. Clara and Ethan hatched a plan that would make even the most ambitious DIYers proud. They envisioned Eldridge Station not as a mere relic of history, but as a pulsating heart of community and culture. Imagine it. An interactive museum where visitors could don period costumes and recreate the excitement of catching a train like it was 1945, complete with a cranky conductor barking orders who wouldn't want to pretend to be a newsboy selling papers at the platform, hawking the latest scoop as if they were auditioning for a role in a Martin Scorsese film. The more they spoke about their plans, the more animated their gestures became, fueled by the sweet nectar of inspiration flowing through their veins. As they walked back, a sense of duty washed over them like a tidal wave. This wasn't just about bricks and mortar, but the very essence of what Eldridge Station represented. Every chipped tile and rusty beam whispered secrets from the lives once lived within its walls that they could almost hear echoing in the newfound silence. Even the guards keeping watch over the station seemed to nod knowingly, encouraging the pair with a sense of camaraderie born from shared purpose. Clara could almost picture herself giving a TED Talk in this very spot, passionately urging a crowd to rekindle the stories of yesteryears, while Ethan playfully rolled his eyes, muttering about the impracticality of her vision compared to his incredible ideas of removing the weeds growing out of the cracks, like a true visionary. But as they both chuckled, they knew they were standing at the brink of something monumental, with heavy burdens and light-hearted dreams crisscrossing in delightful chaos. As they approached the old ticket booth, the timbre of their laughter bounced against the weathered walls, producing an unusual harmony that made the long-abandoned station feel somehow less lonely. The ancient woods smelled of mildew and nostalgia, a potent mixture that evoked memories of carefree summers and rain-soaked romances. The sunlight danced upon the dust motes, causing shadows to perform their own silent dance on the walls, reminding them that the neglect of years past was merely a prologue to the future they envisioned. They were not just restoring a building. They were invoking the very spirit of what it meant to travel, to share experiences, and to craft stories that would outlive them all. Every boarded-up window became a canvas bursting with potential, a reminder that even the most forgotten places could be painted anew with vibrant stories. With hearts full and spirits high, Clara and Ethan took one last look at Eldridge Station, transformed by their newfound purpose. As they walked away, the first rays of sunlight spilled over the platform like confetti at a long-awaited celebration, wrapping the station in warmth. The old bricks seemed to pulse with life, almost as if they were sighing in relief ready to embrace the whispers of history and the laughter of future generations. Ironically, as they stepped into the day, it felt like the station had found its soul again, as if it had been patiently waiting for Clara and Ethan to give it a voice. They ventured forth, hands tightly clasped, prepared to fight for the rebirth of an echoing past that promised to resonate like a catchy pop song through the ages, long after they were gone. On the cusp of dawn, the village of Eldridge stirred with sleep, yawning like a cat stretching in the sun. The railway station, though worn by the hands of time, stood defiantly against the creeping vines and rust that sought to envelop it. Elijah, a young artist with paint-stained fingers and wild dreams, perched on the edge of the weathered bench, her eyes gleaming with hope. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and distant baking bread, a reminder that life churned on. Even while she waited, she could almost hear the whisper of old trains rumbling through her imagination, calling her to adventures she dared only sketch on the backs of napkins and crumpled receipts. Today, she would break free from the dull rhythm of Eldridge. If only the number 7 would show up and whisk her away like a fairy tale prince in a dusty, old storybook. As the minutes stretched on like a taut wire, memories of the station's past began to drift in like the morning mist. A ghostly array of figures flitted in and out of Elijah's perception, lovers bidding farewell with promises of forever, children giggling as they chased shadows, and tired soldiers taking their last rides homeward. Each echo lingered in the cool breeze, wrapping around Elijah like a foggy blanket, reminding her that she was not the first to long for the horizon. The station had become a collector of destinies, a point on the map where hearts thudded in anticipation, their joys woven tightly into the very bricks and mortar. It was like an episode of Lost, but instead of a mysterious island, it felt like the ghosts of missed connections and what-ifs were her companions today. Elijah smirked to herself. What trouble could a girl like her get into out there in the wide world? With a shuddering rumble, the distant clatter of wheels on metal stirred Elijah from her reverie, sending a jolt of electricity through her veins. Her heart raced like an over-caffeinated squirrel, and she peered down the tracks, squinting against the rising sun. It was more than just the rumble of a train. It was the resonance of countless dreams slew along the tracks, a siren song to those who had waited far too long. As the number 7 train rounded the bend, silver and steam mingling in a spectacular display, Elijah could practically taste the adventure, the sweet, tinkling laughter of a child, and the faint remnants of cologne worn by a long-forgotten suitor lingered in the air, blending seamlessly with the acrid bite of coal smoke. If this train could talk, she imagined it would spill secrets faster than an overfilled cup of coffee. Each tale a reminder that life is a series of arrivals and departures, some worth waiting for, others best left behind. The train screeched to a halt, bringing with it a whirlwind of excitement that echoed Elysia's own bubbling anticipation. Passengers disembarked, their faces flush with stories and hearts weighed down by burdens. An elderly woman who clutched a tattered book, a man in a hastily buttoned suit fidgeting with a ticket, and a group of raucous teenagers who echoed laughter, desperately clinging to childhood. Elysia could almost see the clouds of dreams chasing each other around their heads, albeit slightly frayed at the edges like a beloved old quilt. She felt herself drawn to these strangers, as if they were all connected by an invisible thread, woven with the shared longing for more than just the mundane. Come on, world, she thought, standing tall. Let's hit the road. I promise to create a masterpiece. And in that moment, she felt like a budding superhero poised to leap towards the unknown, her canvas waiting. With one last glance back at Eldridge, a village that both nurtured and confined her, Elysia stepped aboard the train, her spirit soaring higher than a kite caught in the wind. The doors closed with a definitive thud that felt like the closing of a chapter. But she knew it was just a prelude to the storm of experiences to come. As the locomotive chugged back into motion, leaving behind the quaint village and its timeless echoes, she wasn't just embarking on a journey, she was setting the stage for a masterpiece of her own. The station, with its peeling paint and whispered promises, faded into the distance, an old friend, now a memory, flickering at the edges of her thoughts. Little did Elysia know that the stories of those before her would intertwine with her own. And as the train raced forward, she braced herself, ready for the adventures of the past to blend into her future, each heartbeat a brushstroke in the art of life. Elysia stood on the grimy platform, the iron supports creaking like the bones of some ancient creature, and she couldn't shake the feeling that everybody who had ever waited here had left a piece of themselves behind. The wind carried ghostly whispers, fluttering like autumn leaves, curling around her ears. It was as if the spirits of the past were gathering, sharing secrets better left unsaid. With each sigh of the breeze, she felt the weight of history pressing down, like an unwelcome hug, intimate, yet suffocating. Who knew what dreams had been crushed beneath the unyielding machinery of time, right here, on this very spot? Maybe even some romantic gestures, like giving a love letter that landed straight into the mud. But of course, there was always the risk of impressing a train to departure in the midst of those grand gestures, which seemed all too common today. And then she heard it, a voice, faint yet distinct, whispering from the depths of another era. It was the voice of Thomas, a soldier with a heart as heavy as the gear he'd carried into battle. "I just want to see her again," he lamented, each word laced with the scent of gunpowder and despair. Picture him, tired and grimy, holding a rusted photo of his beloved as if it were a golden ticket on the next train home. This wasn't the bubbly optimism of a Hallmark movie. No, this was the gritty aftermath of sleepless nights and the agonizing wait for letters that never arrived. Life was equal parts tragedy and comedy, with a touch of gallows humor. It was all too real, and Elijah felt a kinship with this long-gone soldier, and it twisted her heart like a knife. As the night deepened, the air cooled, mingling with the nostalgia of forgotten conversations that played like an old vinyl record. Elijah could almost taste the salt of failed promises on her lips, each whisper reminding her of the sacrifices that echoed like broken records against the timeless backdrop of life and loss. It was an ironic twist of fate, standing still while every other thing in the world rushed forward, leaving behind stories etched in shadows and cobwebs. What would those whispers share if they could crack a smile? Probably a snappy comeback about how the real train had left ages ago. Choo-choo, they might say with a wink. For in this moment, she realized they were all eternally waiting, while the rest of the world sprinted towards new adventures, unencumbered by the burdens of the past. In the stillness, Elijah reached out, fingers brushing the cold iron railing, imagining it as a lifeline stretching back through the ages. She could feel the vibrations of their trials beneath her touch, so profound, the laughter of children, a war-weary soldier's sigh, and the sweet sound of a lover's call reverberated in the air like layered harmonies. Each story was a flickering candle in a mightily stormy world, illuminating the darkness with haunting beauty. And suddenly, amidst the cacophony of emotions, she understood that these voices were not just tales of heartache, but reflections of resilience, yes, and of humor. Each bitter truth contained a shard of light, glimmering even through the thick fog of sorrow that choked the night, reminding her that laughter was the best medicine, even when Uncle Sam did the prescribing when it came to prospects of soldiers headed for war. But just as quickly as they brought her stories of love and longing, the whispers evoked a poignant reality check, like warning sirens in a horror movie. Elijah blinked back tears as she envisioned Thomas's awaiting mother, fingers gripping her apron, her skin etched with worry lines deeper than the trenches her son had fought in. These were tales of time spent waiting, a promise of safety never quite kept, leaving both lovers and mothers rattled on platforms, waiting for trains that were always late, or, God forbid, never came at all. And here stood Elijah, tightly wound with the throttle of fate, caught between fragments of memory and the oh-so-present weight of her own reality. Amidst the sadness, there was beauty. Amidst the chaos, there was order. And just like that, she too became a part of the saga, forever intertwined with those who whispered through the wind, shared their burdens, and dared to hope against all odds that their tunes would echo, timeless and enduring. As the heavens unleashed their fury, the station trembled under the barrage of wind and rain, a cacophony of roaring thunder and drumming droplets that drowned out even the loudest of thoughts. Elijah, drenched not only by the torrent, but also by the weight of confusion and longing, sought refuge beneath the peeling paint of an old shelter. The air was thick with the musty scent of damp wood, mingling with the metallic tang of the tracks that seemed to hum beneath her feet. It was as if the world had turned gray, and every vibrant hope she'd held was washed away, leaving behind a monochromatic palette of doubt and despair. Outside, the storm raged like a furious DJ spinning records at a party no one wanted to attend. The track of her thoughts skipping and stuttering in time with the flashes of ominous lightning. As the shadows deepened, Elijah felt a pull, a magnetism toward the voices swirling around her like the stormy winds outside. They knotted around her heart, their stories unveiled one by one like film reels flickering under a dim projector's glow. She could hear them, whispers of love, regret, missed trains, and abandoned dreams. Among them emerged Leopold, a traveler with eyes brightened by hope, but dulled by the heavy burden of a missed connection, as if he had just stumbled off a lifetime of Michael Bay explosions, only to find himself in a melodrama. His heart was locked in the amber of what could have been, and Elijah could almost sense the warmth of his long-lost love, an echo reverberating through the storm-washed air, as vivid and tragic as a Shakespearean sonnet recited in an empty theater. Elijah leaned closer, caught in the current of Leopold's tale. There he stood, a blurry figure among the shadows, recounting how a brief moment of distraction had derailed his journey into the clutches of what-ifs and endless waiting. His words dripped with sorrow, a torrent of longing that matched the deluge outside. Just one more second, he lamented, echoing the panicked pleas we all have in moments of desperation, resembling a contestant on a game show who missed the final question by a hair's breadth, the grand prize slipping through his fingers. That intense yearning curled around Elijah's own heart. A hot coal nestled in her chest, igniting a shared sense of urgency. Every moment lost could echo into eternity. The grip of Leopold's shadowy presence amplified the storm, and Elijah felt the weight of each soul who had ever lingered in waiting. Time weaved through grief-laden conversations, a tangled web of hopes and memories, the station transformed into a graveyard of departed dreams, where every gust of wind whispered secrets of struggles hidden from the outside world. She was acutely aware of the irony. Here she sought solace from the storm, yet found herself amidst a tempest of the heart, swept away by the testimonies of those who'd faced the dark with courage and despair. Taking a deep breath, she felt the damp air fill her lungs with the earthy scent of longing, a potent cocktail spiced with salty tears and the bittersweet taste of what could have been. And yet, amongst the shadows, a flicker of courage ignited. Perhaps every tale of despair painted the horizon with the brush of hope. Elijah understood now that every train station and every thunderstorm held within them the power to intertwine destinies, to magnify the tiniest moments that lead to monumental outcomes. A cosmic tangle akin to a rom-com plot twist, where the leads finally collide after an entire film spent apart. As she absorbed the desperate echoes around her, she couldn't shake the sense that each traveler left a piece of themselves behind. Ghostly apparitions mingling with the raindrops, sharing laughter and sighs, hopes and regrets, as they waited for their journeys to resume. It was both beautiful and tragic, like a symphony played during the end credits of her own life, filling her with the understanding that pain and joy were dance partners in a timeless waltz. Standing amidst the storm, she vowed to embrace her own journey, promising to honor the stories that shaped her life, while not letting the echoes of others drown out her own desires. Although the storm raged on, Elijah emerged, determined to scribble new chapters, filled with laughter, love, and perhaps the occasional delightful disaster along the way. As the tempest retreated, the sky unfurling its gloomy canvas to reveal patches of sullen gray, Elijah stood at Eldridge Station, the air thick with the rich scent of damp earth and forgotten stories. The vibrant glow of the number 7 train sliced through the rain-soaked haze, beckoning her like a neon sign at a dive bar, promising the best karaoke in town. Yet, as the metallic monster rumbled closer, she felt the tug-of-war inside her, an epic battle worthy of a Hollywood blockbuster, adventure against history, the promise of the unknown versus the weight of the lost. Like a kid trapped between choosing candy or a trip to the fountain of wisdom, Elijah's thoughts swirled like the leaves caught in the gusts around her, each option tantalizing yet fraught with consequence. It was a moment so charged that even the raindrops seemed to hang in the air, waiting for her decision like an audience at the annual Oscar Awards show, hushed and breathless, ready to see who would take home the glory and who might walk away empty-handed, cradling dreams unfulfilled. and awaiting their next audition on the platform of life. Elijah's heart raced with the rhythm of the train's arrival. The clang of the metal wheels on the tracks shivering through her bones like a motivational speaker smashing through a wall of bricks. Each thump echoed memories of those who had once waited here, their lives intertwining like the threads of a tapestry, frayed by time and tragedy. The oppressive air buzzed with stories of laughter, dreams, and whispered goodbyes, each ghostly presence cloaked in the kind of melancholy that would make a grown man cry into his beer. With every beat, it became clearer. To wait was not simply to kill time. It was to delve into the heart of this place, to embrace the specters murmuring forgotten secrets beneath the rusted components of the station architecture. Suddenly, the train felt less like a portal of escape and more like a vessel for her impromptu dramatic flair. Why rush away when she had the world to explore? Right here, among the echoes, the backdrop of relentless rain began to dissolve into a comforting drizzle. As Elijah leaned into the decision that danced on the tip of her tongue like a tantalizing morsel, gathering herself, she could almost hear the caustic humor of bygone travelers remarking on the irony of trains rushing by while they remained alighted on the platform, waiting for their own futures to assemble. It was here, amidst the whispers of woe and wonder, that she found clarity, as if a light bulb had flickered to life overhead, casting a glow brighter than a Comic-Con sign promoting the next big blockbuster. The thought rolled around in her mind, making itself comfortable like an old battered couch. What if her journey to adventure was not a betrayal of those stories, but rather a continuation? As she glanced at the passengers flowing past, she felt the tug of their lost souls urging her onward, their continued narratives swelling within her. Eager to leap aboard her tale with renewed resolve, Elijah envisioned herself as the heroine of her own epic, a brave knight wielding the tales of Eldridge Station like a sword against the dark abyss of ignorance. The train's whistle shrieked through the air, drowning out her frantic heartbeat, turning the atmosphere electric as she thought of the tales yet to be written. It reminded her of that one time a character in her favorite movie chose beer bongs over destiny, an unwise yet undeniably hilarious choice. However, she chuckled. She was no comedic relief. She was the leading lady, ready to wield the power of the stories etched into the very cobblestones beneath her feet. The decision solidified in her mind like the sickly sweet glaze of a carnival donut, addictive and irresistible. How could she ignore her purpose and the adventure waiting beyond the horizon? A mystery whispering her name like an old friend. And so, as the train rolled to a thunderous halt, Elijah felt invigorated, like a superhero donning her cape for the first time. She would step aboard, not as a mere passenger, but as a collector of stories who would bring the echoes of Eldridge along as companions. Each soul's whisper would weave through her journey, crafting a narrative tapestry that would not only honor the memories, but deepen her own quest for adventure. With one last glance at the station that had been a haven for so many lost moments, Elijah realized that the echoes would guide her, illuminating paths, yet unseen, resonating like the notes of a favorite melody that lingers sweetly in the heart. Clenching her fists in a gesture of determination, she leaped onto the train, her spirit soaring, ready to carry the weight of history into the dazzling unknown, where every clickety-clack of the rails promised tales untold. Elijah stepped onto the train platform, her heart pounding like a war drum, echoing the adventures that had danced in her dreams for countless nights. The sun, a rebellious artist, tore through clouds that had loomed like a heavy gray blanket, casting golden beams that gilded the world around her. With a deep breath, she took in the mingled scent of iron and faint, burnt toast wafting from a nearby food stall, a smell that tugged at her insides, promising transient comfort. Just then, a gust of wind tousled her hair, sneaking in a loud snort from a group of teenagers huddling near the tracks, chattering about superheroes and the best pizza joints. And Elijah couldn't help but chuckle at how their laughter broke the tension, throwing her fears into the wind like confetti. As she settled into her seat beside the window, Elijah's gaze drifted from the steel tracks to the countryside swiftly unfurling outside like an endless cinematic landscape. Fields of gold and green raced past like their own excited children trying to catch a fleeting bus. The gentle hum of the train punctuating the moment with a rhythmic heartbeat. The train's wheels clacked and clattered, a syncopation that felt like the pulse of history itself, whispering secrets of all those who had traversed these very paths before her. Folding her hands and resting her chin on them, she recalled the tales that lingered like ghosts in her mind of travelers waiting for their loved ones, stories of love letters and farewells, of hope and obsession that danced on the lips of time. With each mile the train stole from the platform, Elijah felt the stories merging with her own, weaving a tapestry that shimmered almost as brightly as the sunlight spilling through the window. She promised herself, and maybe even the universe, that she would be a storyteller for all those who had waited, each soul a thread in her narrative. It was as if their voices wrapped around her, tickling her ears with light-hearted banter, laughter punctuated by the awkwardness only shared experiences could create. The irony of becoming a storyteller struck her. She had once fretted over her reputation, trying desperately to fit into a mold, and here she was, poised to break it wide open like a piñata bursting with candy and confetti, ready to share her own chaotic, sweet, and gritty story with anyone willing to listen. As the train chugged deeper into the heart of this new adventure, Elijah could almost hear the whispers of the platform echoing around her. Don't keep your stories locked inside. They seemed to chorus, reminding her that every thrilling yarn she spun could pull someone out of their own solitude. It reminded her of an old movie she had seen, where the hero, a scruffy underdog, found power in simply sharing his hardships, a revelation that left him swimming in newfound peace. The train bumped along, smooth and jarring at once, like life itself, full of unexpected twists and turns, making Elijah chuckle at the absurdity of it all. Wasn't it just the perfect metaphor? A bunch of strangers, all on this metal worm hurtling forward, each with their own unspoken tales and unfulfilled dreams, finding joy in the common chaos. Her heart soared as she realized the journey had barely begun. But already she felt a part of something much larger than herself. The train, its whistle slicing through the air like a knife through dubious butter, carried not just her physical body, but the collective essence of all the stories she would encounter. Tears threatened her eyes mid-chuckle as she thought about the roller coaster of emotions ahead. Thrills, heartbreaks, awkward encounters, and dramatic farewells. But instead of fearing what awaited her, she embraced it, ready to dive into the rich depths of human experience. In that moment, Elijah became not just a traveler, but a vessel, carrying the echoes of those who had waited before her, the stories mingling with the rhythmic sway of the train, uniting yesterday with tomorrow. In the heart of Eldridge, where time seems to ambush passers-by, an old railway station stood like a defiant sentinel against the dreary march of modernity. Its cracked bricks and peeling paint whispered stories of countless departures. But today, it thrummed with a peculiar energy. The smell of soot mixed with the promise of adventure filled the air, heavy and intoxicating, much like a pot of coffee on a foggy morning. A flock of crows, perhaps skeptical of this sudden resurgence of human ambition, cawed overhead, as if mocking the audacity of those who dared climb aboard the Resolute. Little did they know that behind every steamer ticket was a heart eager for tales that were yet to unfold. Like the sweet, tongue-tickling flavor of a soda pop crackling to life after being shaken a bit too long before cracking it open. Among the throng clambering toward the train, Elinor stood out like a splash of bright paint on an artist's palette. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement, the kind that transforms the mundane into the magical. She could hardly contain her enthusiasm as she clutched her worn leather satchel, filled with doodles of imaginary adventures and hastily scribbled dreams. With every click-clack of a rail as a nearby worker loaded baggage, her heart synced to the rhythm, creating her own symphony in that crowded station. Wistfully, she shot a glance at the steam engine, a hissing beast eager to shake off the dust of stagnation. It spoke to her in whispers of far-off lands and untold stories, like the first chapter of a book just waiting to be read. Nearby, Thaddeus adjusted his spectacles, the kind that had seen better days, and likely worse than that, while eyeing the rickety luggage pile like it was a curious artifact from a long-forgotten civilization. A scholar through and through, he wheezed softly, peering at the passengers as if they were rare specimens that might hold the key to some grand historical truth. Under his breath, he muttered about lost knowledge, convinced that this jumble of humanity contained secrets older than the dust that collected on his leather-bound tomes. The train's whistle blew, sounding like a goose with a bad cold, yet somehow resonating with purpose, and Thaddeus's frown softened into a smirk. He wondered whether ignorance could also be considered a lost artifact, and if so, he was surrounded by a wealth of it, just waiting to be catalogued. And then there was Marla, enigmatic and muted, cloaked in shadows and secrets, more riddle than woman. She stood slightly apart, her dark garb fluttering with the breeze, exuding an air of mystery that could give even the most skilled spy a run for their money. A single glance at her face revealed nothing but the depths of a midnight sky. It was impossible to tell whether she was pondering the next chapter of her life or devising a plot worthy of a Hitchcock film. The swirling steam enveloped her like a cozy scarf, and one could almost imagine it whispering her secrets back to the smoke-stained walls of the station. As the conductor shouted a last warning, her lips curled into a knowing smile, hinting at stories that could make the bravest adventurer shiver in delight or dread. As the travelers boarded, each one hoisting their bundles of dreams and disappointments, a palpable sense of camaraderie formed amidst the uncertainty. The Resolute shuddered, almost like it was waking up from a long slumber, eager to take flight into the wild, untamed, unknown. The train lurching forward felt like a metaphor, or perhaps even a meme of their lives, clunky yet powerful, aiming for horizons too distant to fully grasp. Each puff of coal-laden steam was a promise. Every whistle carried the weight of their hopes, fears, and laughter, all mixing into a tapestry of human experience. And just like that, the weary travelers set off, embarking on a journey where every bump on the track became a reminder that life was a grand adventure, all aboard the Unpredictability Express, with no turning back now. As the Resolute rumbled along the twisting tracks, its heavy wheels drumming against the iron like a war march. The air crackled with excitement, and the scent of coal smoke. Inside the cabin, a motley crew of travelers exchanged stories, their voices weaving a tapestry of adventure and nostalgia. Elinor, with her bright eyes and an insatiable wanderlust, spun dreams of far-off lands where mountains kissed the sky and deserts whispered ancient secrets. Thaddeus, with an air of academia, leaned back and regaled them with fables of long-lost civilizations, his words painting pictures of temples draped in vines and streets once bustling with life. Laughter echoed among the passengers, the camaraderie warming the chilly air, as if the train itself thrummed with the stories being shared, its iron heart beating faster with every tale told. Yet amid the rising tide of joy, there lay a shadow, Marla, enveloped in a cloak of mystery, sat quietly in a corner, her gaze piercing the horizon as if looking through the veil of time itself. When she finally spoke, her voice was the chilling calm before a storm, hinting at dark secrets that the platform crowd had ignored. "You know," she said, her words dripping with foreboding, "this train isn't just a haphazard collection of steel and steam. It's a vessel burdened with history, a past that is as treacherous as the splintered tracks beneath us." The laughter faltered, turning into uneasy glances exchanged among travelers, as Marla's unsettling revelations began to chill the atmosphere warmer than the coal fire beside them. The journey continued, the steam engine's whistle piercing the stillness like a sudden burst of laughter in a ghost story. Outside the window, the scenery transitioned from charming valleys to whispering trees, limbs swaying eerily as if to beckon the train closer to secrets long buried. The Whispering Pines forest loomed ahead, dark and beautiful in a way only nature can be, like that one cousin at family reunions who carries a haunted aura, but insists they are just misunderstood. It felt alive, the shadows twisting and contorting as if they were holding a silent conversation, with whispers tickling the ears of those who dared listen. Here, the once pleasant camaraderie transformed into an undercurrent of anxiety, a creeping dread rustling among the travelers like fallen leaves underfoot. As the train edged closer to the forest's edge, the familiar clickety-clack of the rails morphed into a haunting rhythm that echoed the thumping hearts of the passengers on board. The sun, once a shimmering companion, now hid behind thick clouds, casting the landscape in ominous shades of gray. "I hope that tree over there doesn't reach for my wallet," joked Thaddeus, attempting to lift the mood. Yet his eyes darted nervously toward the impending woodland. Just outside, a branch twisted like a skeletal hand, and for a moment it felt like the forest itself was holding its breath waiting to decide which traveler might be next for a tale of woe. Elinor clutched her satchel tighter, her dreams of adventure now tinged with uncertainty, as a chill crept down her spine. By the time the Resolute crossed into the shadows of whispering pines, the cabin felt more like a gathering of wary soldiers than jubilant voyagers. The silence inside was thick enough to slice. Even the coal stove seemed to dim its glow, as if afraid of what lay beyond the train's protective walls. Marla leaned forward, her voice low but compelling. This forest has seen its share of stories, some of them not meant to be told. With every breath, the air grew heavier, an unspeakable tension brewing, not unlike the finale of a particularly suspenseful season of a beloved sitcom. In that moment, as the train trudged deeper into the gloom, the mix of adrenaline and fear became electric, an uncharted path woven with the stories of the past. A journey that promised not only to connect their lives, but perhaps to forever alter the course of their existence. As the old steam engine chugged its way closer to Whispering Pines, the air thickened with an eerie tension that seemed to wrap around the train like a cobweb, impersonating a warm hug. The whistle of the locomotive let out a forlorn cry, almost as if it sensed the ominous aura lurking just beyond the feeble glow of the train's lamps. The once vibrant landscape began to fade into a spectral gray, the trees standing like ghostly sentinels on either side of the tracks. This wasn't just any fog. It was the kind that could sneak up your spine and whisper secrets of old, if only you dared to listen. Marla, ever the perceptive one, clutched her seat, her wide eyes reflecting the flickering light. A modern-day Dorothy who had just stumbled into the wrong fairy tale, or worse, a horror flick resembling those flicks where people make the worst choices imaginable, like going into abandoned houses at midnight. As the train slowed to a turtle's pace, a real-life version of The Walking Dead was scripted in real time. The shrieks of the whistle dwindled into a low, mournful groan, while ghostly shapes danced in the mist outside, making everyone squint like they'd just walked into a sun-soaked beach after a winter in the north. Passengers exchanged anxious glances, their fear palpable as they typically reserved such feelings for family reunions or tax audits. Then came the noises, rustling like untamed whispers trying to slip between the train's iron skeleton. It was an unsettling symphony of creaks, howls, and the occasional heart-lurching pop, instigating children to clutch their stuffed animals, while adults grip the nearest armrests for dear life, imagining unseen beasts ready to pounce as soon as the conductor rang for the next stop. Marla, channeling her inner survivalist, leaned into the growing trepidation among the passengers, offering a steady stream of warnings like a walking horror encyclopedia. With every warning, she underscored the forest's ominous reputation, speaking of tales where brave souls had reportedly vanished without a trace, probably sidetracked by rogue spirits or bad Wi-Fi signals. Her fervent voice flickered between dramatic storytelling and a motivational speaker's pitch, even throwing in a few stay alert moments worthy of a horror sequel. The group's fright ramped up, transforming uncertainty into panic as the flickering lights overhead became as disconcerting as a disco ball at a funeral. They huddled together, not unlike characters in those atmospheric thrillers, where they'd realize that safety in numbers doesn't always work when a chainsaw-wielding maniac decides to crash the party. With each passing moment, the air inside the train felt charged, swollen with anticipation, as if the forest itself was secretly plotting its next move. From just beyond the thick curtain of fog, the faint scent of damp earth and pine needles permeated the cabin, mingling with the twinge of anxiety so potent it could almost be tasted. Eyes darted to the windows, longing for reassurance from the outside world. Yet only shadows stared back, shrouded in the clutches of silence, an unsettling silence that could make a cat burglar look like a choir boy. Everyone suddenly fancied themselves an amateur detective, piecing together snippets of folklore, a haphazard game of Clue, where no one knew who'd be the next to go missing, and whether the culprit was Colonel Mustard or the woman who always ate tuna salad sandwiches on the train. This was no picnic, but rather the countdown to an uneasy awakening. Everyone shared the same unspoken mantra. It was best not to be left alone in the dark. As the passengers wrestled with their fears, they struck a deal for better or worse. They would confront the encroaching shadows together. It was like assembling the Avengers, but instead of capes and superpowers, they armed themselves with nothing more than their collective wits and a series of dubious ghost hunting tips acquired from late-night television. United by their anxiety, they dared to question the forest's mysteries, knowing that evading the truth might only fill the void with more frightful legends. With the fog swirling like the plot twist of a badly written novel, and the sounds festering like a forgotten genre film, they lodged their resolve deep in their hearts. Hand in hand, they were lured into the depths of the haunted forest, perhaps searching for ghosts, or maybe just a way back to the light they once knew. As the old steam engine wheezed to an unexpected stop in the heart of Whispering Pines, a profound silence descended upon the train crew like a heavy winter cloak. The whistle, once a shrill herald of adventure, now hung in the air like a ghostly echo, swallowed by the looming shadows of ancient trees. The air was thick with anticipation, tinged with the scent of rust and damp earth, as Marla's voice cut through the stillness like a knife. "I've been here before," she confessed, her brow furrowing in a blend of regret and resolve. The others turned, expectant eyes widening, as if she had just unveiled a hidden chapter from a dusty old book left on the shelf too long. Little did they know, the histories of this forsaken place were more alive than they had ever imagined, shivering beneath the surface like an uncanny reflection in murky waters. With each hesitant footstep into the cursed woods, the travelers could almost hear the whispers of the long-forgotten souls curling and twisting around their ears. The trees, gnarled and twisted as if in perpetual agony, towered above them, their bark rough and mottled like the skin of a banshee. Marla began to share the haunting tales of her family, caretakers of secrets so ancient. They made the Stonehenge look like a recent construction project gone awry. "This place," she said, her voice wobbling with the weight of history, "harbors spirits not quite ready to leave the party." As she led them deeper into the thickets, the atmosphere thickened, and the scent of wet leaves mixed with a hint of something rotten, a reminder that just like a bad horror movie, they may be in over their heads. Suddenly, the scene shifted from eerie to spine-chilling, as the air crackled with tension, and an unsettling chill swept through them like a banshee's wail. Shadows darted between the trees, shapes shifting with purpose, igniting each traveler's deepest fears. One could almost hear the ominous soundtrack playing in the background as they squared their shoulders, hearts drumming like a battle cry. "Don't look now, but I think we just entered the Upside Down," quipped Ben, trying to lighten the mood even as his knees quaked like a leaf in a storm. But Marla's gaze remained steady, revealing her inner strength as she stood a few steps ahead, a lantern of hope flickering in a world gone dark. As the restless spirits materialized, flitting and flailing with ethereal grace, Marla faced them with a mix of fear and resolve. The air hummed with an electric charge, warm and cold swirls colliding in a tempest of conflict. Their gazes locked, and the hidden truths began to unravel like an old sweater, each thread a mystery, pulling at the fabric of time itself. "I know you," she said, her voice steady yet alive with tremors of recognition, as yawning chasms of her family's past spilled forth like a long-forgotten tale, rediscovered. Humor was forgotten in the face of destiny as they stood before the spirits, shadows of the past demanding acknowledgement, respect, and most importantly, resolution. The group huddled together, hearts pounding against the backdrop of ancient woods, steeped in secrets, a battlefield of shadows and light. "So, do we fight the fearsome shades, or invite them to join our book club?" Olivia murmured, earning a nervous chuckle amidst simmering tension. In that fraught moment, collective resolve sparked as they decided to confront these specters, not just in defense, but in understanding. Facing the ghosts was not merely a confrontation, it was their heartfelt invitation to breach the divide between the living and the lost, to shed light on pain and forge a path through the gathering dark. And so, hand in hand, they stepped forward, ready to rewrite their stories, entwined forever with the restless spirits of Whispering Pines, as the ancient woods held their collective breath in anticipation as the first light of dawn crept over the treetops. A golden hue bathed the decaying trunks and rustic moss of Whispering Pines, casting shadows that danced like ghosts in the early morning mist. Aliner, Thaddeus, and Marla stood shoulder to shoulder, the cool air prickling their skin, invigorating yet laced with an otherworldly tension. Courage surged in their hearts as they faced the spectral forms enveloping the ancient trees, spirits as ethereal as cotton candy spun under a carnival tent. The whispers of their plight echoed through the forest, a symphony of sorrow and anger, as if the very essence of the woodland wished for them to listen, to understand. With every heartbeat, they felt the weight of history pressing in, reminding them they were part of something bigger than themselves, something far more significant than all those random Netflix binge-watching sessions they'd spent skipping through worthless dramas. Together, they stepped forward, hearts pounding like the wheels of the Resolute on the old iron tracks, to confront the sorrow-filled spectacle before them. Aliner, with newfound strength coursing through her veins, raised her voice, a sound that rose like a phoenix from the ashes. "We've come to listen, to honor your stories," she declared, her words trembling with sincerity, evoking a lull in the cacophony of sorrow. The air thickened with anticipation, and for a moment the spirits seemed to pause, their transparent figures shimmering like mirages on a hot summer's day. In that fragile silence, a flicker of understanding bridged the chasm between the living and the lost, a pause pregnant with possibilities, much like the moment in every classic horror movie before someone screams, "Get out." Marla stepped forward next, clutching a locket that once belonged to her grandmother. The smell of old cedar mixed with her grandmother's, perfume wafting through the air, filling her heart with bittersweet memories. Your stories deserve to be told, your pain, your love, your losses. They're part of us now, she urged, her voice steady, as the morning sun began to pierce through the dense branches above. The colors of the forest transformed, shadows shifting from menacing to melancholic, as one spirit lingered closer, its eyes reflecting centuries of untold sorrow. The forest sighed, an audible shift, the winds whispering sweet nothings of reconciliation, the beating heart of Whispering Pines beginning to echo with the promise of healing. It was as if Marla, channeling her ancestors, spoke a forgotten language of connection, awakening the echoes of what had been long silenced. Thaddeus, not to be outdone, suddenly saluted the gathering spirits with an air of goofy optimism, his journal tucked under his arm like a rebellious notebook in detention. And we can learn from you too. I mean, someone needs to write the annotated version of your epic tales, he exclaimed, his exuberance reminiscent of a young scholar desperate to impress a wizened professor. Spirits chuckled, a sound like rustling leaves in a gentle breeze, shaking loose the last remnants of their long-held grievances. With each moment, the air lightened, and a warmth spread through the grove, transforming the once hostile battleground into a sanctuary. They could almost hear the spirits' past laughter. And for the first time in ages, the pain ebbed, allowing room for hope, like an unexpected plot twist in a gripping noir film. As the last threads of the spectral tapestry unraveled, a tranquil silence fell over Whispering Pines, a deep breath shared by all who stood witness to this mystical communion. The Resolute resumed its journey, the steam billowing into the crisp morning air like the sigh of a dragon rousing from slumber, signaling the end of one chapter and the vibrant beginning of another. With Alina armed with a stronger sense of self, Thaddeus with pages full of lessons, and Marla cradling the legacy of her family, they boarded the train, their hearts pulsing with the rich fabrics of their shared adventure. As the sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, shadows of the past faded, replaced by an abiding warmth that whispered, "You are never truly alone." They steered into the sunrise, the echoes of their lonesome journey lingering warmly in their souls, a sweet reminder that heroes can celebrate their triumphs, even if that means facing down some melodramatic spirits along the way. In the heart of Elderville, where the air hung thick with the sweet scent of wildflowers and fresh-baked bread, life ambled like a sun-kissed cow. The townsfolk, with their sunburned faces and gentle smiles, raised crops in harmony with the seasons, trading tomatoes for honey at the bustling market every Saturday. Children's laughter rang out against the backdrop of clanging metal from Tom, the blacksmith, as he hammered away, creating horseshoes and plows, each strike echoing with the promise of tradition. But on an ordinary Tuesday morning, the peace was shattered by a thunderous roar that sent ripples of anxiety through the day's calm, as if the sky were making a grand announcement. The train was coming. The mere thought of the iron horse tearing through their beloved town ignited both excitement and a flicker of worry in every heart. Could it whisk their monotonous lives away like a puff of steam, or bring them perilously close to chaos? Mary, the schoolteacher with fiery red hair and a spirit for adventure, stood at the window of her modest classroom, peering out with eyes that mirrored the wide-open sky. The sight of black smoke billowing on the horizon made her pulse quicken. She dreamt of cities beyond the hills, where the streets pulsed with the energy of a million stories just waiting to be told. But to the townsfolk, the train represented something entirely different. A beast that could swallow up their familiar ways and belch out strange new customs. It was as if Elderville's residents were on the cusp of a roller coaster, hands up in the air, hearts dancing between thrill and fear. Mary sighed, torn between her yearning for adventure and her love for this quaint life filled with familiar faces and yearly fairs, where everyone knew your grandma's secret apple pie recipe. Elderville's streets buzzed with chatter and speculation as townsfolk gathered around the old oak tree, rumors spreading faster than wildfire. It was a colorful tapestry of voices, a blend of hope, fear, and snatches of gossip about what the arrival of the railroad would mean. Will I need to start selling my sweet pickles in jars that say "Made in Elderville" on them? Fretted Mrs. Thompson, her hands trembling around her knitting. Others pondered whether the bustling train would bring a mix of charming travelers or troublesome outsiders who might not appreciate the fine art of handshaking and small-town gossip. Somewhere in the midst of it all, Mary imagined her dreams unfurling like a train ticket in her hand, a little crumpled, yet brimming with possibilities. As she cast a glance toward Tom, wondering how they could bridge the divide between adventure and tradition, as the whistle of the locomotive cried into the air like a morning rooster in a hurry, Tom felt a twinge in his heart. Not all change was bad, though it often stung like a fresh burn from his forge. Life had a way of mixing up the ingredients of routine, and maybe the train could bring more than noise. It could inspire new trades, new friendships, and perhaps even a few wild tales worth sharing by the fire. Under the oak tree, anticipation hung thick as sweet molasses. Everyone leaned in closer, imagining all the different ways a train could transform their lives. Mary would undoubtedly find her adventure, and Tom, well, perhaps he'd discover that even blacksmiths could learn to embrace the clattering cadence of progress. With the first puff of steam escaping the iron beast, old Elderville stood ready to welcome the unknown. A small town on the brink of remembering that sometimes the tracks of memory lead us to unexpected destinations. As the rumble of the steam engine echoed through the valleys, Elderville began to awaken from its sleepy slumber, like a bear emerging from winter hibernation. Or more accurately, like a kid discovering soda for the first time. Businesses bloomed along the newly laid tracks, storefronts sprouting like weeds in spring, filled with wares from places far beyond the horizon. The scent of fresh paint mingled with the earthy aroma of the nearby fields, creating a heady perfume of progress. Folks could hear the distant chatter of travelers, each bringing tales that swept through town like wildfire on a windy day. "You won't believe what I saw in the city," they'd say, eyes wide, as elders squinted suspiciously over their spectacles, wondering if all this change was for the better or just a passing fad, like those crazy newfangled dances called the Charleston or the Lindy Hop. Mary, with her heart full of hope, saw the railroad as a golden ticket for her students, like a magical portal to new worlds. She envisioned her classroom filled with stories of bustling cities, exotic foods, and daring adventures that would make even Harry Potter's escapades seem dull in comparison. "The world is so vast, kids," she would exclaim, brandishing a globe like it was the Holy Grail. Her students, wide-eyed and buzzing with curiosity, started to dream bigger than the fields surrounding their little town. They had visions of becoming explorers, scientists, and even stand-up comedians. Who knew a laugher could travel so far? But not everyone shared her enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Tom was feeling the weight of change pressing on his shoulders, like a stubborn mule refusing to budge. He watched as sleek new stores, filled with shiny, mass-produced tools, began to overshadow his trusted workshop, full of hand-carved wonders. The rich scent of sawdust and old wood that had always welcomed locals now clashed with the sharp tang of new machinery that seemed to scream efficiency and progress. His heart thudded with nostalgia. He could almost hear the echoes of his grandfather's voice, warning him about convenience, erasing the artistry of craft. It was like watching your favorite band sell out for a cheesy commercial, sure. They might gain popularity, but what happened to that raw, authentic brilliance he cherished? As days turned into weeks, the town square bubbled with tensions, where debates erupted with a fervor that could rival any sensational courtroom drama. Old-timers stood in their dusty boots, spitting opinions like watermelon seeds, while newcomers waved the banners of progress high above their heads, shouting slogans that made both sides cringe, but couldn't help but smile. Why bother with tradition? They'd proclaim, oblivious to the irritable glares of the town elders shushing them with the kind of authority usually reserved for middle school principals. The train whistle sliced through the air with a sharp reminder of change, a sound that was both an anthem of opportunity and, as colors brightened and shadows lengthened, Elderville was caught in a vibrant tug-of-war that echoed through the hearts of its residents. With each arrival of the train, spectacles unfolded, some welcomed, some bewildering, all profoundly altering the rhythm of their lives. The clatter of wheels and hissing steam became the backdrop to their existence, much like an epic soundtrack narrating their shifting identities. Mary thrived, her classroom filled with maps and dreams of exploration, while Tom continued shaping wood and resisting the tides of change, wielding his chisels like a knight defending his castle. And in this small town, spun from iron tracks and dreams, the question wasn't just about acceptance or resistance. It was about defining what Elderville truly wanted to be in this new age of opportunity. The air was thick with tension in Elderville as Mr. Clyde, a cigar-chomping railway tycoon with an ego larger than his top hat, rolled into town like a steam engine with malicious intent, his grand vision of expanding the railroad cut straight through the town's very soul, threatening to bulldoze their beloved park, the community center, and that dusty diner where old-timers claimed the coffee was brewed in 1953, while the townspeople shuffled nervously, whispering about the man's sharp suit and sharper ambitions. One figure stood tall amidst the gloom, Mary, with her fiery red hair sparkling like a bonfire in the night. She mobilized a crew of spirited townsfolk, her voice cutting through the grumbling like a whistle through steam. "This could be our chance," she exclaimed, her heart aflame with hope, her eyes gleaming with dreams of prosperity, while the scent of impending conflict hung heavy as a morning fog over the tracks. But Tom, the grizzled guardian of tradition, wasn't about to let his homely abode become a casualty in the pursuit of profit. With a demeanor as solid as the tracks beneath his feet, he rallied the old guard, knocking on doors like a one-man door-to-door campaign against modernization. Huddled in the tavern, he rhymed off tales of Elderville's glory days, where horse-drawn carriages patrolled the streets, and the smell of freshly baked pies wafted through the air, sweeter than a summer's day. "Clyde wants our history on the chopping block," he warned, thumping a fist against the weathered oak table, sending a couple of dust mites flying into the air like confused fireflies. His rallying cry echoed through the smoky room, igniting the embers of nostalgia in his neighbors as they began to hum the tunes of defiance, their hearts pounding with artisanship of the past. As the fateful town meeting approached, a palpable current of anxiety sparkled in the air, like static before a thunderstorm. The church hall buzzed louder than a beehive, filled with townsfolk, their faces a medley of hope and apprehension. Mary stood at the front, her fingers tapping nervously against the podium's edge, while Tom paced the floor like a caged lion, his vest tight enough to choke any lingering humor from the evening. When Mr. Clyde finally strutted in, all smug confidence and polished shoes, he was met with a cacophony of cheers and jeers that had the ringing quality of a roller coaster, rising and falling dramatically, a mix of potluck casseroles and the sharp odor of sweat mingled in the air. As voices rose higher, echoing off the cracked wooden walls like a city symphony gone haywire. As the debate raged on, the fervor reached a fever pitch, and the assembled crowd transformed into a mob, every good-intentioned neighbor becoming an impromptu activist. 1 minute Mary was weaving dreams of prosperity and shiny new uniforms for the local fire brigade, and the next, a pie-wielding grandmother declared war, flinging her cherry pie like it was a frisbee of justice. Laughter erupted, blending with anguished shouts over the fate of their beloved town. It was pure chaos, the kind you'd expect if someone shouted free donuts. At a police rally, tension filled the hall like soda, wanting to explode from a shaken bottle. With Mr. Clyde's monocle nearly popping from his eye, as townsfolk bickered over cake recipes, while also discussing life, liberty, and the pursuit of hefty bank accounts. Irony dripped from the air like melting ice cream, as nobody quite knew whether they were fighting for their heritage or just fighting each other for the last bite of that cherry pie. In the midst of the uproar, as chaos reigned supreme, a cloud of uncertainty settled over Elderville. The future hung in the balance, like a railroad car teetering on a narrow track, ready to plunge into an abyss or glide into a bright new tomorrow. With the sense of disharmony and pie still lingering in the air, Mary and Tom realized that they might be left with no choice but to find common ground amidst a battlefield of differences. Could they really put aside their stark divisions to save the town? Or were they destined to become collateral damage in a capitalist game of chess? The tracks, once symbols of progress, now morphed into a poignant reminder of their shared past, demanding resolution from the very people who claimed it as their own. As the sun dipped behind the hills, casting a golden hue over the small town of Millfield, the atmosphere crackled with air thick enough to slice the tension. Whispers of discontent grew louder after the latest railroad mishap. A freight train, carrying a mountain of grain, had derailed at the crossing. The screech of metal and the crunch of wood echoed like a bad horror movie that nobody wanted to watch, leaving not just twisted steel in its wake, but shattered livelihoods. The scent of spilled grain mingled with the stench of burnt rubber and fear, reminding the townsfolk that danger was not just a passing thought. It was parked right in their backyards, with the clang of the locomotive still ringing in their ears. Mary and Tom could feel the weight of their differences. But if there was ever a time to squish their beef like a bad tomato, it was now. Mary's heart raced as she surveyed the ruins, her mind swirling with thoughts about her bakery that lay just a stone's throw from the tracks. The aroma of freshly baked bread that once wafted through the streets now felt like a cruel joke. Who would dare buy pastries, knowing a train could come barreling through unsafely? Meanwhile, Tom, the town's unofficial Mr. Fix-It, stood glaring at the rickety crossing sign that had fallen victim to the chaos. His hands were gritty from work, but they felt even dustier now, caught in the web of indecision. It was ironic. Two headstrong individuals, both leaders in their own right, but they'd let petty disagreements overshadow the bigger fight, saving their home from the brink of disaster in a moment that felt like it could be a scene from a 70s disaster film. The community gathered at the town hall, where the air was heavy with hope, fear, and just a dash of stale coffee. Crumpled faces and knit brows filled the seats, while the remnants of yesterday's worry replaced whispers of ambition. Everyone awaited Mr. Clyde, the railroad representative, whose arrival felt more dramatic than a plot twist in an old spaghetti western. He strolled in with an air of confidence, shaking hands that felt like clammy fish, offering hollow reassurances that grated on the nerves more than they soothed. "We will fix this," he proclaimed, and the townsfolk leaned in, half holding their breaths, half planning how they'd chase that rascal from town if no real help came through. The meeting evolved into a passionate debate, punctuated by raised voices and the occasional, "Have you even seen Millfield?" thrown like a verbal grenade. Mary, steely-eyed and relentless, countered Clyde's proposals with the fervor of a librarian defending a beloved shelf of dusty classics. As temperatures climbed and the low murmur of uncertainty rippled through the crowd, Tom finally found his voice among the chaos. If they were going to rebuild, they needed to preserve what made Millfield, well, Millfield, without grief for the past weighing them down. Negotiating was like a dance, awkward at times, yet powerful, as they tangoed around issues of safety and progress, finally finding their rhythm amidst the discord. Finally, after what felt like an eternity in the town hall purgatory, a compromise emerged, like a phoenix rising from the ashes of a derailed train. With Mr. Clyde agreeing to upgrade safety measures while preserving those beloved lumbering trees lining the tracks, a sense of unity washed over the crowd, a strange elixir that tasted better than any pie Mary had ever baked. Laughter bubbled up unexpectedly, cutting through the heavy mood like a well-timed punchline in a sitcom. Oddly enough, Mary and Tom exchanged relieved glances, realizing that the weight of their shared history could be the very glue binding them in this chaotic moment. As the townsfolk filed out into the cooler night air, they could almost smell the hope. It was as tangible as the lingering scent of smoke, and just as engulfing. Elderville, once a quiet speck on the map, now buzzed with an energy that rattled the very bones of its foundations. The rail cars chugged in and out like gigantic metallic dragons, breathing clouds of steam and smoke into the air, mingling with the sweet scent of fresh baked goods from Millie's bakery. Old man Jenkins, who once grunted more than he spoke, now had tales to tell at the tavern of daring train heists, and the time he nearly caught the world's fastest locomotive with his bare hands. The sound of steel wheels on iron tracks became the heartbeat of this transformed town, reminding everyone of new beginnings and old friendships stitched together like a patchwork quilt. Elderville was no longer just a place where people lived. It was a symphony of progress and togetherness, playing a tune that resonated in the hearts of all who called it home. Mary, the feisty schoolteacher with a penchant for adventure, had seen her classroom swell with bright-eyed students eager to learn about the grand tapestry of history and innovation, no longer confined to dusty textbooks that smelled like they had seen better centuries. Her lessons featured real stories of railroads that connected not just towns, but hearts. Each day, she'd have the kids sprint to the window whenever the train thundered by, a cacophony of whistles and rumbling wheels stirring their imaginations to life. Some days, it's not just a train, it's an airship on wheels, she'd declare, her eyes twinkling with mischief. The spirited debates that erupted after each lesson, a rumble over who would win in a race, a locomotive or a superhero, made her realize that education was more than just books. It was about igniting a passion for discovery, even if it ended with the kids daydreaming about being the next Thomas Edison on their lunch breaks. Meanwhile, Tom, the town's blacksmith known for crafting everything from horseshoes to whimsical garden sculptures, felt the winds of change whip through his forge. Adaptation, as they say, is the name of the game, and Tom was quick to adapt. He began forging creative brackets to hold the new railway signs, each one adorned with intricate designs that told stories of Elderville's heritage. Steam to drink, steel to forge, and laughter to share, his workshop became a gathering spot, filled with the aroma of heated metal and the tang of sweat, where neighbors found solace in each other's company. I thought we'd be making horseshoes forever, but now look at us. He laughed, wiping his brow and holding up a gleaming bracket. Their community spirit burned brighter than the forge's flame, and just like that, everyone knew that railroads could unite lives just as easily as they could transport freight. As the season changed, so did the community's spirit, culminating in the annual festival by the tracks. Vibrant flowers adorned booths, and the air filled with the heady scent of sizzling sausages, fresh cornbread, and sweet pie cooling on windowsills. Music from local bands floated through the air with an electric energy that made even the most rhythmically challenged among them attempt their best jig. Children raced around, their faces painted like tiny warriors of celebration, while the laughter of adults mingled with the distant rumble of the trains, creating a joyful melody unique to that day. The festival was a reminder of their shared struggles, the years of hard work, the sacrifices made each day, and now how they could celebrate the victories together, finding unity amid the rhythm of life that the tracks brought to their doorstep. As dusk fell over Elderville, and the sky turned a shade of purple, so deep it looked like a painter had run out of ideas, the townsfolk gathered one last time by the tracks. They shared stories of the past, lessons learned, and dreams for the future. As the sound of a train echoing through the valley reminded them they were no longer alone in their journeys. Each passing train marked a ripple in their lives, a connection to something larger than themselves. With the steam rising into the twilight, they forged new memories against the backdrop of their unified town. Elderville was not just moving forward, it was charging ahead, dynamic and vibrant, like a bridge between the pages of history and the unfolding story of their collective future.